Old mate Erik with a K gets announced finally for Man United. Pogba probably plays his last game ever in a United jersey. Some more of the United circus to cover as well, plus UCL preview and a couple of the highlights from the last EPL round. Play that music, son. Are you wearing a Kendrick shirt?
Are you wearing a circus shirt and talking about United the circus?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm in my fucking United X Cirque du Soleil collab apparel. Oh goodness.
Nice.
Which one's the biggest circus out of those two?
Oh, I don't know. Cirque du Soleil's been doing it for a while. It's got flips and shit. But United is more funnier.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Entertainment, pure pound for pound entertainment over the last 2 years. Fucking no one talks
Well,
about Cirque du Soleil anymore. It's all about United.
the thing about the United circus is that it's the first all clown circus.
Oh, hey, would you look at
Poor
that?
fellas.
He's witty.
Poor fellas, eh? Let's start there. Let's start there. They can't even get themselves together enough to spell their manager's name right in their announcement tweet. So they've announced Erik Ten Hag, not to be confused with I'm Eric Laporte, or any other, or Eric Cantona, perhaps.
Or
This
Eric
is
the
actually
Hag.
exactly this is Eric with a K. Poor bloke shows up first day on the job. Absolutely calamitous loss to Liverpool. First day on the job, I say first day that it's announced that he'll be taking the job, not like the poor bloke was already shoved out onto the sideline.
Man, he
Although
was.
Ralph is desperate to get off that sideline. He wants to be anywhere else in the world right now than there.
Eric, he can't wait to get into the Dove position. But I
Yeah,
like how first day on the job, and he's already being used as not as a scapegoat, as a human meat shield
yeah,
to deflect
legit.
from their poor performance. Like, oh, we just lost 4-0 to our bitter rivals. Oh, also, we've got a new manager. Look away, kids. Look away. Look at this new shiny thing here with the
When
K.
I saw an Arsenal fan post on I think it was on Reddit. It was almost as bad as them when they announced their retro kits halfway through a loss.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's clear deflection, but in a game where already there was so much else to talk about. I mean, like Liverpool's title hopes. Um, Unfortunately, the passing away of Cristiano Ronaldo's one of Cristiano Ronaldo's twins. All that sort of stuff. But it just goes to show how much of a circus the club is, where none of those sort of talking points permeate throughout the game, and the game entirely revolves around how bad of a performance they put together. I mean, if you want to, you can talk individually. You can talk, your Maguires, being just terrible. Midfield players being practically, inexistent throughout the whole game. Pogba coming on, realizing that this is not where he wants to be. In about 3 or 4 minutes after coming on, suddenly there's a what's it called, a mystery injury that pops up, and suddenly he can't play anymore. So it just garbage performance from them. But also, I feel like it's the peak of Man United's season so far. Obviously, the peak on the wrong side of things, but peak in the sense that Pogba's probably played his last game for United. This is probably that was probably the last meaningful game I think Ralph coached. I don't think he'll be on the sideline for another legitimately meaningful game. You know what I mean? I think he'll just, tidy up the rest of the season. And we all know that, obviously, with Erik coming in. There's no other big fixtures on their calendar, really.
They have Arsenal next, which is I believe today or tonight at
Yep,
9:30,
tonight at 9:30.
and then
Beautiful start time.
he's got fantastic. And then what do you call perfect time for a comedy special? There you go. What do you call it? And then they have Chelsea after. I think on Friday next week, early
Mm-hmm.
morning. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty much it in terms of big
Yeah.
teams. I don't know if they're facing. I haven't looked ahead of the schedule, but maybe they might have a game against one of the top four teams that they're currently battling. I think they've played most of them, so it's all up to the rest of the schedule to play out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, look, I think
I would have said that was the last game where if they'd won it, they would have actually gained some momentum from it. If they beat Arsenal, for example, tonight, I don't think anyone's believing that's going to turn the tide for United.
Well,
I
yeah.
don't think. Yeah, I don't really think that they've got much of a hope against Chelsea, to be completely honest with you. So I
Mm,
feel like it was the last game really for an impact to be made by Ralph. I suppose you know what I mean.
mm,
I think feel
mm.
like the rest of it is just sort of dead rubber.
Yeah, yeah. I think he could have maybe had a saving grace or like a highlight moment.
Yeah.
When like at the end of his term, they would have gone. At least he beat Liverpool. Unlike Ole, but
Or put
unfortunately,
on even if they put a decent performance in, they would have
mm,
said, okay, well, look at the first game against Liverpool and how bad they were. Look at
mm,
this game against Liverpool and it was a draw or a 1-0 loss or whatever it was. And you'd
mm,
say, oh, there's
mm,
been some progress made under Ralph. But I
mm,
think this sort of really highlighted that there's been absolutely no movement up or down
yeah.
really in their performance level. And it just sort of solidified like we're in a holding pattern now until Erik comes in and then the rebuild actually begins.
Yeah, it's just I think it's highlighted. Look, I'll give credit to Ralph. He's been pretty. I wouldn't say blunt, but he's been honest in his assessments after the games and
Yeah.
on the club in general. I think at least he's
Mhm.
had that. Especially in the last couple of weeks. At the start, he wasn't so honest. I think he did say grains of truth, but it wasn't as harsh as it was in the last game where he's like, yeah, 10 to 12 players are going to come in, a couple more
Mhm.
will probably go, same amount would go out,
Mhm.
and we're going to have to completely rejig the side, which is fair enough because that's what they've needed to do 5 managers ago,
Yeah.
to be completely honest. But they've replaced deadwood with more deadwood on top, and it's just become a hodgepodge of different managerial philosophies across the
Yeah.
last 5 coaches that have been in since Fergie's retirement. So I think, look, it was a rubbish performance. Granted, they didn't have a lot of their main players. So Varane was out,
Yeah.
Ronaldo obviously out, and a few other pieces were missing, which I think opened the door for Phil Jones to come back from the wilderness for the second time this season. Um, and like Ralph said, he went to a 5 back just because he didn't
Mm.
have any more ball winning midfielders left in the squad. Which kind of is funny considering that he let what's his name, Donny van der Beek go on loan. But hey, it is what it is. Hindsight's a bitch. Um, no, I guess Lingard's not a ball winning guy, but I don't know, try
Bit of
shoehorn,
hustle.
maybe
Yeah.
move around. I don't know. I'm not Ralph. That's the thing. But yeah, overall, look, to your point, you're right. If you got a good performance out of the guys, it was like a 3-2 or 3-1. But clearly the quality was so far between them that it was
Mm.
obvious. But at least they gave an effort. It would have been, I guess, respectable. But
Mm.
again, it was just an all-around poor performance. On the other end, Liverpool just firing on all cylinders. Like the interplay between the front three at the time, Diaz, Sane, and Salah, or
Mm.
just sorry, Mane. Fucking hell, Mane and Salah and Diaz.
You got it.
It's like they were playing, like they've been playing together for years. And Diaz has slotted in seamlessly in limited
Yeah, man.
minutes. Obviously, he's had some good game time, but obviously it's not what he was doing at Porto, where it was a day in and day
Yeah.
out in the starting
Yeah, of
lineup. But
course. I mean, look,
he's he's got
he's
to
got
earn
to
his
hustle into the lineup. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he's picked his and he's really picked up how the team plays and what he's been asked of. So great signing so far. And everyone else is just humming along. Like you can't really fault any of the performances on the pitch on the day.
No.
And completely just pushed them aside. And really emphasized how much of a meme team Man United
Yeah.
are. When you're a meme when there's I saw a post and I think it might have been Sky Sports or one of the other British pages where it was Man United just warming up on halftime, just passing the ball up, and it's like, and the caption was just like, oh, the United team couldn't lose the ball or something like that, just making a mockery out of them, just doing a halftime drill, and it's just like, geez, you've sunken so low that they're
Yeah.
looking for content to make fun of you rather than praise or highlight good work done. So it's I reckon they haven't hit rock bottom yet. They're very close. I think once they find out that they're not making the four and they'll be playing in
Yeah.
Europa or conference, I think that'll be the big, like, holy shit. Like, this is like they've woken up from a big night of drinking and they go, holy shit, this is a hangover.
Yeah. No, I agree. Look, the thing is, if they miss out on Champions League football, then it's like, fuck, Ronaldo's not in the Champions League. They have to go through a rebuild without having the carrot to dangle in front of those players. The new signings, like, hey, we're going to be in the Champions League next year. So I think it hurts their short term goals because obviously they're not in the Champions League, but also hurts their long term plans because it'll put a sort of spanner in the works trying to get these new players on board. Because just having, just because Ronaldo's, I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to just play with Ronaldo, but the reality is, without Champions League football, people are going to look elsewhere. I mean, even Ronaldo may look, to,
Well, he's
hey,
got a year left on his contract, so who knows
exactly, hey,
whether he stays on.
Jorge, get me out of here. Like that could totally be a thing as well. So I think you're right. I think that they're going to be like, they're already at a low point, but I think that their mindset is going to take a real hit when it gets solidified that they're not going to make the top four. Obviously, that's still up in the air.
Yeah.
But
The fourth position is lava at this point. No one wants to take
yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. But look, if when that sort of comes to fruition that they're not in the top four, I think that'll be the biggest blow that they're going to suffer in the season because it's gonna hurt pretty much all the plans they have. And just while we're talking about plans that they've got, I don't know if you've heard, but rumor is around 200 mil transfer budget for Ten Hag to play with. I mean,
What does 200
what
mil get you these days anyway?
that's what I was going to say, right? Like, he hasn't been there that long. It's not like he's been there for like a year and a half, 2 years, where he's got this big, long scouting list of, budget buys that he could make to turn the team around. He's probably just, at best, he's got maybe, one or two sensible purchases that he thinks he can line up, but the rest of the money is just going to go towards probably another blockbuster signing. So, like, what's that? Maybe at most 3 players? At
Well,
most?
the thing is, depends on how much they'll get back for the players that are obviously in terms of wages, plus also if anyone else leaves for a transfer, like Pogba or Matic, because I don't know if Matic's contract is expiring or if he's announced that he wants to go asking for a transfer request with a little bit of time left. So I don't know, but whatever the money they get back in wages and transfer fees from the players, they do move on. I don't know. Like, look, Ten Hag's got what are we, week 33 in the competition? So what's that? Another 5-6 weeks plus, a World Cup and off season. So he's got a few months to build a dossier. Well, I guess he's got to finish off what he has with Ajax and just walk the league. But you can do that in your sleep at this stage for him. He's got time to build that dossier, I think, but where do you start with this team? That's the thing. Like, who do you sign and what do you sign? Because think of it this way: he's coming from Ajax, boatloads of young talent, but at a higher price. Is he gonna sign Gravenberch? Is he gonna bring someone over like Mazraoui? Is he gonna bring Justin Timber with him or anyone else or Onana or something like that?
No, none of them are coming.
I think this is probably one of the trickier rebuilds because you've got a core of players that are on high wages, so they're probably reluctant to. Some of them like, look, why would I move? I'll just sit on the bench and then wait for my contract to expire or force a mutual termination, something like that, right? And then you've also got divas that need to stay on, that want to prove their point or reluctantly move, whatever the case may be. And then you've just got dead wood on the pitch, like you've got the likes of Fred, Lingard, Donny van de Beek as well. They're all these. It's just a mess. It's a perfect storm of. It's kind of like how Arsenal was a couple of years ago when they still had Ozil on the books, but he was sitting out. Talks of Xhaka leaving, all the, even Rams, like all the little, I guess, trinkets from previous managers kind of sitting there on big wages, plus guys like Aubameyang who felt entitled after his great season. So you've just got this. It's just such a big mess to clean up for a guy that's never. I know he was assistant at some other big clubs. I want to say Barcelona, but I could be wrong under Rijkaard. But I think when you go from managing Ajax and you have this pipeline of great youth coming in, and you take over and you kind of rebuild and rejig everything and become one of the better managers they've had in the last couple of years, it's a lot different than stepping into the Hollywood showbiz side of football like Man United. So look, I don't know what he's going to do with Ronaldo. I don't know what he's going to do with Fernandez. I think those are two big ones. Even Maguire, I think, and De Gea. I'd say those are the four biggest problems he has to deal with because, first of all, Pogba's going to leave. That's problem sorted. He's made the decision for himself. That's
Yep.
fine.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
though, what does he want to do? 1 year left. Is he still up to it? Does he buy into what Ten
Yeah.
Hag is putting out? Fernandez, obviously, I think he might be the only bloke that actually cares, but he keeps apologizing for everything. And, he hasn't had his best season either. So
No.
there's another thing. And then the big one, Maguire. What do you do with someone that you've paid $80 million? He's your club captain, but has been overcommitting, underperforming, just a meme at this point. And then you've got David De Gea, who's arguably a great shot stopper, but he's not a good keeper for playing with the ball at his feet, which is what Ten Hag emphasizes on. So what do you do with him? And he's on humongous wages as well. So it's not like you just loan him out or, buy him out for a bit of change and let him walk. It doesn't work. It's not going to happen. So tell the bloke to walk after he's had an okay season. So there's a lot of big issues that need to be ironed out and sorted before.
There's also like, because all those things are true. And they're all the short-term things that he needs to solve. Like those are the things that he's probably thinking upon walking into Old Trafford, like those are the top of the list, right? How do I deal with these things today? But then I also think, like, how is this guy going to be successful, right? Because the only way we've seen him be successful so far truly is with that Ajax team. And if you were to show me a team structurally that was the polar opposite of Manchester United, I'd probably point to Ajax. You know what I mean? Entirely based on their youth system. They don't make big money signings. Their players are generally young players. No real big egos on the team, practically at all, the whole way through. He has reign. He had reign over all decisions practically made for the team. All footballing decisions were practically in his hands, right? All these things are like the polar opposite of how United does things, right? And what I'll point to is that I'll say, even with all that sort of backing from the club and support in terms of the infrastructure and all that sort of stuff he had at Ajax, the reality is he just dog walked the league that's been dog walked several times by Ajax, right? Like I'm not taking anything away from what he's done. It's been tremendous, right? But the reality is that they just lost against Benfica in the Champions League, right?
That's why that
So
should
it's
have
like
won.
exactly. So I kind of think, well, even if he brings the same exact level of success that he had at Ajax to United, it's still worlds below what they're aiming for. They're not aiming to be a good youth prospect filled team that has a good cup run every now and then and is, perpetually in the top four. I mean, realistically, that's kind of what they're at this stage, just without the youth prospect bit. So it's like, where is he going to take them? And I feel like the only place he could take them is to being a new club entirely. You know what I mean? I think that there's what could maybe be seen as success for Ten Hag is maybe not genuine cup wins or like a performance thing, but just maybe more of a changing of the guard to a new way of thinking for Manchester United. And then when they get there, how successful they're going to be with that style, I don't know, right? But the reality is that I think that the only way he does well is if the whole club internally and externally changes how they are. So I think that in itself is like, what's the pathway for them from where they are now to being that sort of club, let alone the pathway from them being bad performance-wise to good performance-wise. Like, fuck all that. How are they going to go from this club that's at the moment full of, massive wage glut, full of, superstars with egos, illogical purchases like Maguire, how are you going to go from all that to super sensible, smart, sophisticated football? Like, that transition is yet, like, they've already had Ralph in for 6 months and we've seen nothing of that. So how are they going to go from what they are now to this new thing? And then even when they get there, because like I just think it would suck. Imagine if they finally do this whole transition where they're full of youth prospects. They're the Barcelona of the EPL now. They've gotten all the way there. But then even after doing that transition, they're still just finishing third and fourth and getting to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Like, was it worth it? Did it matter to do all that? Yeah, you've got a bit more. You're more of the internet darling now that you've got more youth prospects on your team. But the reality is that the results don't really improve that whole much. So that's
Mm.
kind of where I am with this Ten Hag signing. I'm like, yeah, it's cool, it's interesting, it's probably better for football that
Mm.
one of the more sort of brand aware clubs is moving towards actually, trying to put a good product out on the field. That's cool. I can appreciate that. But at the same time, it's like, well, whatever. We play some nice passing, pressing football, but we're still finished fourth. Like, who gives a fuck?
Mm. Mm. I think that the biggest success for Haag would be to bring in one stability, a good solid football identity, because at the moment
Mm,
United hasn't had one in God knows how long. No sort of
mm,
identity behind them in terms of a football playing style. At least with Ferguson, though there wasn't any sort of tactical nous, you could see that every player was giving everything they want and everything that Ferguson asked for. So it's bring back some sort of identity. I think they do need to change their mindset. They are no
mm.
longer the club that Ferguson operated. The,
No.
the the game of football has completely changed, and the business of football has even further changed from when United was at its peak. So I think the challenges are a lot more difficult now compared to obviously when Ferguson had just first left, and obviously Ferguson's reign and stuff like that. But for Eric, I think, to be honest, if he could just get him competing at least for the top three, they don't have to. Then I don't think they'll beat. They don't have to. If he, I don't think he'll have to beat the likes of United and City every time. But if he can make it a close run effort, and then a good run in the Champions League, a quarter final, I think isn't for United. If they can
Mm,
consistently go to the quarter final, maybe push for a semi final, if you ask someone now, would they take that 4 years of a consistent quarterfinal berth and a good hard fought two-legged tie and maybe a semi-final sandwich between them? They
yeah.
take that right now. So I think if you can
Yeah.
establish a sense of direction, obviously, and what do you call it, stability, and some sensibility in the club, I think that's a success. Now, whether the trophies come after that, that's just going to be a matter of who, what, where, and why, and the forces that come between
Yeah.
football
Yeah.
and luck involved. So,
Yeah.
look, I think for him, the main thing is if he can turn around the attitude of the players at the club and establish a smart, sensible, stable club, then I think it's an all-around success because they tried 4 different managers before that. Some of the
Yep.
biggest names in football, whether it be Louis Van Gaal, Jose Mourinho,
Hmm.
and then giving shots to random blokes like Solskjaer,
Hmm.
and even Moisey at the time, giving him a shot at a big club.
Hmm.
You know, now he's done something that those guys couldn't. So it's going to be a big job. I think it's not going to be an overnight success, and whether the club and the fans understand that, that's a whole nother thing. And then if they allow him the time and space to operate with, hopefully Rangnick won't be abrasive and they won't clash because the ideas of football should be the same. But in
Mm.
terms of personalities, who knows how him as a director of football and Ten Hag as
Yeah.
the team manager will work together. That's a whole nother thing. But at least the footballing identities are somewhat meshed together well. So who knows how it's going to work out. But I mean, all things considered, it's not an
Mm.
easy job, and I think he fully understands that. Well, he
Yeah.
hopes at least.
Yeah.
And look,
I just
we'll,
look
we'll
the
see
way
how
the
it goes.
way the way the way I see is that when he had a team playing exactly how he wanted them to play, and
Mm,
he had the exact players he wanted, and he had practically everything other than just big money signings at Ajax,
mm.
they still only got as far as they got in the
Well,
Champions League.
to be fair, when he did have his best team, which was the team with Ziyech, Van der Beek,
Yeah.
what's his name, Frankie De Jong, De Ligt,
Yeah. Mhm.
the zenith, I guess, of the Ajax team, he got them to within a goal of a final in the Champions League. So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
fair, he's done it with a strong side before, but without
Yeah.
the, I guess, the
Yeah.
branding and the
But
international.
here's the difference, right? He takes that Ajax team, gets them to, within one goal of a final,
Mm,
parades everywhere, right? If we're talking 3, 4 years in, and that's his zenith for Manchester United, that's not going to come off as a success. That's going to come off as like, broke. You've had 3, 4 years here. Um, this is not the zenith for United. It's win it or go home. That's where
mm.
I'm kind of iffy with this guy, right? I think even if he ticks all the boxes that we've outlined for him, right? The reality is he still needs to win something. That's the
He just he does
end
need to
goal. It's
win something.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
But
he
here's
does.
the thing.
'Cause do you think if you think 3 or 4 years from now and they've got maybe one trophy more, do you think they're gonna keep him around and be like success Alex Ferguson? Like I don't think so. I feel like if by this time next year we're still in the same talk, but he's axed Pogba, De Gea, Ronaldo, he's cut all the fat and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
People aren't gonna look at him like, hey, but sensible transfers. You're still
Yeah, no,
six, but sensible
obviously,
transfers. Like
obviously, yeah.
I think it's that. Yeah, he's probably going to take them to a better place in terms of how they think about the business of football. I'll agree with you there. But I think if the results aren't, truly better, then I don't think he's gonna come off as a success. I
Mm.
just don't think Man United is that sort of club. If he does that at, let's say, a Spurs or a West Ham, where, oh wow, this guy's really evolved the philosophy, everyone's gonna be like, terrific, I love this. But
Mm.
at United, just simply changing the perception of the club isn't enough. Like, he truly does need to win titles.
I think he does need trophies 100% in his stint, whether it's 5 years, 3 years, he needs some sort of silverware. But look at the last couple, man. What have they won? Since I
Nothing.
think the last trophy they won was
Yeah.
Mourinho's Europa League
Yeah.
title.
Yeah, but
Since
I'll just say to you, do you think if as they went through those seasons not winning anything, if through those seasons they played attractive football,
mm,
competitive football, the
mm,
attitude of the players was admirable, and they had all
mm.
those things, right? I
Oh,
don't think that.
they'll get one title eventually. If that is they'll
Yeah,
get
but
some sort of reward.
will they? I don't know. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it's going to be enough to change the identity alone. And
Mm,
as far as I can understand from what Ten Hag's done, that's probably the best he can hope for, is that he'll change the identity of the team. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
just
maybe that will be the solution to winning the trophies if he does these intangible things like identity and smart
yeah.
moves, whatever. Maybe
I'll
then
give
that
you.
will lead to the silverware. I don't know, but
So the only person that we could really tie that to that's done that in the Premier League is Klopp at Liverpool.
mm,
Do you think he's going to have anywhere near as long a leash as Klopp did?
well, the thing is,
That's the
Klopp's
thing. And
previous
Klopp
success
took
at
him,
Dortmund's, yeah, it's hard to say
and
because it's
yeah, and also like Liverpool was in the shitter. Like, I know Man United's in the shitter at the moment,
no,
but
no, they
Man
were in the
United.
same. Liverpool was probably in a worse position because they were out of money,
That's what I'm
out of
saying. That's what I'm
players.
saying. Yeah, see, that's what I'm
Mm,
saying. So Man United, even though they're in the absolute shitter right now, and perception is probably lower for them now than it was for that Liverpool team before Klopp got them.
mm,
The
mm,
reality was that Liverpool team was mid-table, and Man United in the shitter is still battling for top
mm,
four.
and they
So
just
so
got
not
off a season with Suarez, the
so
season
so that,
before.
that's what I'll say to you. Klopp came into a team with lower expectations and with higher prestige because he'd just done what he did with Dortmund, right?
Mm,
Ten
mm,
Hag is coming in with higher expectations because this team is significantly better than the Liverpool team that Klopp inherited, right?
mm,
And he's got significantly less prestige than Klopp because, yeah, all right, Ajax, but he hasn't really done a whole lot in terms of
mm,
international football or anything like that. So
mm,
I think he's got a shorter leash than Klopp had at the time. He's going to have less backing from the board because, as much as they're hiring Ralph and him, they still haven't actually made any real tangible actions that say that they're aligning with that, right? And the fan base is nowhere near as eager to sort of, take on a rebuilding phase as the Liverpool fans were back then. So
mm,
I feel like, yeah, there's obviously, this is the right move. If you were to line up everyone that's out there, who are the options for United? What are the ways in which they could tackle a rebuild? This is the correct way to go about it. 100% understand. I just feel like the way that the club is built and the way that the fans' expectations are set, they're not ready for a rebuild phase. And I think that they're going to go down a road that, even at its most successful, which is them, turning into like a Liverpool type thing where they've got what's it called? What's the a wage structure? They're not
it's
overpaying, they're not
called a
underpaying.
waste.
They've got a wage
Mm,
structure in place. They've got an identity. They've got all these things, right? If that takes them 5 or 6 years to build, I just don't see the man lasting till the end of that trip. Like, it won't happen. Like, what if next season they finish one spot lower than this season? But it looks better.
can't sack
Pressing's
him.
nice. No
Can't
one's
sack him.
posted an apology on Instagram. Like, all these sorts of things, right?
Rashford's
Okay,
got 30 goals in a season.
but they still finish third or fourth or fifth. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like, it's fuck.
mm.
Okay,
It's
fair enough.
yeah.
We're in the similar sort. Exactly. And now, not only did we finish fourth or fifth, but we don't have a big name player like Ronaldo or anyone selling jerseys. So it
Mm.
just, I feel like it's a nice fantasy play. I think it's going to be good for the game of football, but I think he's going to have to do something that'll really surprise me as a manager that he hasn't done previously to really turn this club around in terms of a performance standpoint. I think he's obviously going to make an identity change. If they boot Maguire, Pogba, De Gea, and Ronaldo, I mean, you're going to end up playing differently. Those are the spine of the team. So if you're going to bring 4 different guys in, it's going to be completely different to what you're currently putting out there. It's just going to be, is it going to be different in the sense where it actually equates to more points on the scoreboard, or is it just going to be, a nice feel good change, and that's sort of it. Is that going to be enough even? I don't know.
I think a lot of it doesn't depend on Ten Hag. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of the stuff outside that needs to be outside of his control, like expectations and stuff like that, that need to
Yeah.
be aligned before we can
That's
measure.
why, look,
We have,
my
even
point.
in this discussion, we have different levels of what is success at this stage. So imagine
Exactly.
a
Exactly.
fan base of United
Yeah.
size and the stature of the club with their expectations of what success is or what they're expecting from Ten Hag. Who
Yeah.
knows? It's just such a,
Yeah.
again, we've
That's
gone
why.
on.
That's why I think it's like no matter who you bring in managerial to change the club, realistically, it's not going to be the thing that turns them around. They've got an infrastructure issue. They're buying the wrong players. They're selling the wrong players. They're paying them the wrong amounts. All that sort of stuff. They're getting everything wrong off the field. So you're already putting the team in a disadvantageous position before they even go out there. So I think you're right in saying that more of this is out of Erik's hands than is in his hands. I think he's got a chance to maybe make the team play differently, play a more respectable style of football, more organized, and therefore earn himself, some stock in the managerial world. But I think realistically, I just don't see them giving this guy 6 years to rebuild everything and start everything properly. And then, after the rebuild is done, giving him more time afterwards to fulfill the potential of that rebuild. I mean, you're talking about 4 or 5 years. I don't see it happening. He's a good coach. I understand that. But Man United at some point is going to bring in some big personalities, you know? And when they bring in those big personalities, the expectations will go considerably higher. And all it takes is one 4th place or 5th place finish during that time, and he's gone. It's not going to be like Klopp at Liverpool, where they go 3-4 years and we muddle around and let's raid Southampton and do all these things and wait for teams to get relegated and steal their best players. I don't think he's got that time to do that with this United team. It simply put, when Klopp picked up Liverpool, there was no player like Ronaldo in the squad, right?
100%. But also he had the team, but a team of the whole backrooms, not the backroom staff, the transfer committee, I guess, was there picking apart, going, all right, we're gonna go Southampton, that's good value,
Yeah.
Mane, this guy, that guy. They inherited again similar squad where there was dead wood and missed transfers. But they said, look, let's look at what type of coach we're bringing in, what type of
Yeah.
players he likes, and how does that fit within a budgetary monetary system that'll work
Exactly.
both
Yeah.
ways. And that's why you get the signings of Van Dijk, Naby
Yeah.
Keita,
Yeah.
Thiago, etc., Mo
The
Salah.
the only and it took years to line
Yeah.
up those transfers and get them
Mm,
on board and all that sort of stuff, right? And then get them
mm,
on the same team and
mm,
get them playing the right way. The way I see that it working out for Ten Hag is that if they do all those same steps in a streamlined manner, if somehow Ralph's already got his little black book of all these players that are like the perfect pieces to bring in, right? And then the right prices and everything like that, and instead of having to bring in, some young youth prospects and work them into the team, he just brings in some ready-made guys that maybe Ten Hag's coached in the past or Ralph's coached in the past or whatever have you, and it's the perfect everything synchronizes at the same time, and away we go, and it only takes them a year or so. But I've already heard, I think Ralph just earlier this year that they're looking at like 2, 3, or 4 windows before they get all the moves that they need done,
mm,
right?
mm,
That's 12 to 24 months, bro. Imagine 12 to
mhm.
24 months of United losing and they don't have Ronaldo to cheer about. Like I don't see the man lasting until the end of the season if they're not getting results. You know what I
You
mean?
have to be full. I think it requires full commitment on all parties. I think that's the crux of the whole discussion. I
Yeah,
think it requires
yeah,
full commitment from Ten Hag, full commitment from the club, and full commitment from the fans to understand that this
yeah.
isn't
Oh
going to
yeah,
be overnight. This isn't going to be with a couple of big names that'll this will be resolved. It's gonna take long, steady progress and a few, steps forward, steps back, step forward,
yep,
step back, progress and then dismay, something like that. It's once speaking through it out loud, it just sounds like such a massive undertaking. It's
yeah. Look,
even bigger than I thought.
I'll give you one, right. I'll give you this thing this is kind of what I've been thinking about.
Mm,
Let's say they perform slightly worse than this season, right? And I'm talking on a point stand base, not what the product they're putting out there on the field, right?
mm,
Just a couple less points this season, and you're talking about an 8th or ninth place finish,
mm.
right? Imagine this guy picks up the team, and currently they're in 4th or 5th, and after a year of rebuilding, they finish 8th or ninth. Do you see the United fans looking at that and going, it's just a rebuild?
It's
I just
50-50. It's going to
I
be very
can't I can't
raucous.
see that, bro.
It's
I
going to be
can't see that.
raucous. It's
Especially
going
if
to be
they miss out on
boisterous.
Champions League this year, if they cop 2 or 3 seasons until we fix this. No, the reality is that last season or season before they finished second?
Uh,
It was Solskjaer, so I think it was last year.
I want to say no. I think it was. I think
Year
the high.
before?
I think it was actually Mourinho. He finished second. Oh, actually no. It might have been the
Solskjaer did
last
finish
season or the
second.
season before. It must have been the season before because they just
Yeah,
somehow finished second. Everyone fell by the wayside. It's when Liverpool had all the
injuries. Yeah,
injuries and COVID, and yeah, it was the
yeah,
first year of COVID. So 2020,
yeah,
that
yeah.
season,
So
1920. I
like,
think. So,
look at that. They've had a second place finish with arguably the same team. You know what I
mm,
mean? If they were to slip down after doing a rebuild, I just don't see their fans being okay with that. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like
mm,
I wouldn't be. If I'm a United fan, I'd be like, look, it's great. I love that we're going this, philosophical approach, tremendous. But if it just means we go another 10 years without winning a trophy just to win one after that in a just slightly more aesthetic way, it's not a good trade, I think. I think a
mm,
much better trade would be you get rid of all the dead wood, right? And you make genuine big personality signings and you bring in a big personality coach who could run all that. And then there's a chance that you win the next 3-4 years. You know what I
mm,
mean?
mm,
Is it the longer term approach? No. Is it what's on brand at the moment in the EPL? No. Every team is trying to go for these long term projects. But
mm,
I think it's just more in line with what the fans expect. So I just think that there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of dismay next season for
mm,
United. That's kind of
mm.
what I see. I just don't think that their fan base is ready for a rebuild where you're playing a bunch of hardworking two-way midfielders and like a Dusan Tadic type striker up front, and you've got not one bloke out there that can sell more than 10 jerseys. I don't think that's how United works, especially under the
Mm,
Glazers, to be honest. Like
fair enough.
unless ownership changes too, like it's going to be
Oof,
hard. All right,
that's
let's get into the UCL here because we're running out of time. Um,
UCL this week. We've got Man City versus Real Madrid first leg, and then Liverpool versus Villarreal.
yeah,
Tough tie for City. Really drew the short end of the stick here, but in all honesty, in terms of how it matches up on paper and tactically, I think they'd be a lot happier than versus Villarreal now because
oh yeah,
Villarreal, with their stubbornness and the way they've shown the ability to suffocate a large attacking threat like United, not United, fuck Bayern, in the last round,
mm,
they were they posed more of a threat to do what Atleti did in the last round to City. So I think it'll be an open game. But again, how do they deal with Benzema? Is Diaz going to be back?
yeah,
City have looked okay. They didn't look their best against Atleti across both ties, but they got it done, which is, I guess, a hallmark of a good team, as they say. So
mm,
it's going to be a tight tie, I think. But all things said, I think I'm going to go with City on this one, just because I think Real Madrid in the second leg against Chelsea kind of showed a weakness that they can be easily exploited. You just have to figure out what the game plan is and then go at them down that weakness. So I think City have the players and the coach to kind of do that. So it's I think it's up to City to lose. Real Madrid, to be honest, up until this point and up until the PSG leg, no one really expected them to go this far as
No, not at all.
and as strong as they've gone, as strong as they've looked. Sorry, so I don't know. I think it's City's to lose.
It's City's to lose for sure. I'll agree with that.
Mm.
I think as well, you're right in saying that, like, if City were to pick out of Madrid and Villarreal who to play, I think they'd probably want to play Madrid more, just
Yeah.
because, although Madrid's shown against PSG, for example, they can shell up and they can go on the counter, all that sort of stuff. It's not their best game. It's
Mm.
something that they can do, but it's not, where they're most comfortable. It's just they're a very experienced team with an experienced coach, and they're pretty malleable. But the reality is that they're much more comfortable being in control of games rather than on the back foot. Whereas Villarreal is very much happy, especially in the Champions League, to sit for the whole 90 and be without the ball. They don't mind. So I think you're right in that regard. I think where it's worrisome for City, and this is more of like a feel type thing. It's not really, a tactical issue, but it's the fact that Madrid has shown in this tournament in particular that when the chips are down, they have big boys that step up. And City, specifically this season, have struggled to get their big name players to really perform in the big games. KDB has been the only one that you can point at to and say he's been consistent in the big games. And as much as I love KDB, he's a great player. He's a great playmaker. He does have a goal in him or two. His game, the nature of his game, makes it quite difficult for him to take over completely if no one else shows up. He needs a dance partner. He's not going to beat two or three men off the dribble and sink one into the top corner. He's not got that game to him. If a chance spills out to him or he beats a man near the box, yeah, for sure he's got that in him. But for those opportunities to arise, other players around him need to sort of create danger and be useful. I'm just looking at like who they're going to play in their front line, and I just feel like whoever plays in their front line is going to have just a real tough time finding breathing room amongst Real Madrid's back line. They're not the best back line Real Madrid's put together, that's for sure. But they're all four of them are fellas that just do their job. Like, you're not going to get any of them doing a Trent Alexander-Arnold and forgetting to mark a player or anything like that. They're going to make whoever's in City's front line work for every ball they get. And if you look at who's been up there, Mahrez, Sterling, Gabby Jesus, fucking even Grealish has had a go playing false nine, Foden. They're all diminutive, small players, not very physical, and can easily disappear in a game after a few kicks. And I know that Madrid's going to go out there to kick the shit out of players. So I feel like if City wins this game, it's going to take a genuine, not masterclass, but it's going to take a genuine top performance from their team. They're not going to win this game because Real Madrid didn't show up that day. Do you know what I mean? I just think that Madrid's going to go out there. They know what jobs they need to do. They know what they need to do to frustrate the players, right? And there's really no lever that Pep can pull to stop that. He doesn't have a big target man up top or someone to send in behind the runners or anything like that to disorganize the Real Madrid sort of structure. That's where I think it becomes worrisome, right? We saw what they did against Atleti, for example, when they didn't have to deal with any offensive threat at all. They don't have someone like Benzema to deal with. So I feel like that's kind of where that's the big question, right? Who of the City front line is going to be the one to break down Madrid's defense? We saw, for example, against Atleti that they struggled for the whole 90 until Foden came on. Who's going to be that guy this time?
Yeah, I think City's success is going to be in just keep movement and keep the back line guessing and keep everyone running, because obviously, like you said, they're all diminutive. I think the key to them is just the nature of everyone swapping positions and rotating and doing what they do best. So I agree. It's not going to be a masterclass, but they really need all the things that they really do well, like the movement, the intricate passing, the possession, all to play out well for them to be able to get a result out of this. Because I think that the small front line needs to rotate around. Your Fodens, your KDBs, your G, they need to all kind of interweave and run into the box and overload for them to be able to break Real Madrid down.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be a very tight City performance. They're not gonna luck one across the line. I just don't see that happening. The other thing that I think is a bit difficult to contend with for City is that out of all the teams they've faced in the Champions League so far, this is by far the most press-resistant midfield, right?
Mm.
Casemiro, Cruz, and Modric, they're much harder to press than Atletico Madrid's midfield combination was, right? So their whole defensive strategy relies on being able to, win the ball back quickly in the midfield. I think when you're pressing players like Modric and Cruz, you're much more liable for a chip through ball over the top. And guess what? With Vinicius and Benzema, they've got a lot more to contend with than they did against, for example, Atleti, who had just João Felix, trying his best. So I think there's a lot more calculation to be done against Real Madrid than there was against their previous opponents. But at the same time, like you said with the Chelsea game, Real Madrid's shown to be able to be sliced and diced. They can make, defensive errors with marking in the box and all that sort of stuff. My kind of thing is like, if we have a nice, solid attacking performance from Gabby Jesus, Sterling, Mahrez, whoever it is up top, I think there's a chance for it to be a nice cruisy City victory. The difference being is that if they have an issue with where they're stammering in front of goal like they were against Atleti, I think they're going to be punished because they're not going to be able to go 90 minutes against Madrid and not concede a chance.
No, I agree. Let's look at the other legs. So you've got Liverpool, Villarreal. A tough game, I think, for Liverpool because they're going to have to. They throw a lot forward, and Villarreal showed us that counter-attacking is the best way for them to win. They sit really deep, make it hard for you to get in behind, if at all you can get in behind. A bit of a athletic light, I guess. It's going to be tricky for them. I don't think there'll be goals galore for them. Unless they kind of break Villarreal's spirit, which is difficult, as shown by Juventus and Bayern across two legs. I think Villarreal at this stage really have nothing to lose. If they go through, wow, they're in a final. These players will probably play the one and only final for most of these players. Whereas, for Liverpool, they're coming in as favourites. And it's a lot to take in, especially, yes, a lot of these players did win it last time around, but it's a different thing when you're versing a minnow like Villarreal. And I think the nature of their game is going to be stifling and difficult for them to break down. And I think, Mane and Salah are going to have a difficult time to find that space out wide like they usually do. And I think with the likes of Trent, I think that's one place that can really show weakness and a spot for Villarreal to kind of open and get in behind.
One thing that I just want to point out, both, well, even Pep does it as well, but definitely Klopp. One of the things Klopp does is with Trent and with Andy actually on the other side is when the fullback goes up, they don't make an overlapping run. They invert and go on the inside. So does Bayern Munich, right? That's why Dan Juma was having a field day, right? Not on Alphonso Davies' side. He just goes up and down. But the other bloke on their right back, right, Pavard. He always drifts into the center. That's why Dan Juma was having an absolute field day on the counter attack.
That's why. Yeah, that's exactly why I brought it up.
Yeah, that's where I see a worry, just as you see with Liverpool, right? Is that this Villarreal team is not just a team that knows how to shell up and that's it. They've actually got a very methodical way of counterattacking as well. That's why they were creating so many opportunities against Bayern Munich, right? That's where I think the worry is for me, because although Bayern Munich, you probably say less so of a team at the moment in comparison to Liverpool, I do think that their back line is more traditionally defensive than what I consider Liverpool's, right? And if even the more traditional defensive back line was scrambling so much with these counterattacks, what's going to happen when Liverpool get caught with both Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander up? You know what I mean? I think there's an opportunity for similar issues to occur against Liverpool as that they did for Bayern with those numerous counterattacks. The only difference being is that, Bayern Munich have a Rolls-Royce defender in Van Dijk who floats everywhere and reads every bit of danger perfectly. But I just think that, if Villarreal, I know it's pretty obvious if Villarreal score, it's going to be on a counterattack.
Thanks,
I just think it's the quantity of the counterattacks are going to be much higher than we initially expect. I think we think it'll be like a one shot, one goal type scenario. But I think when you've got Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander pushing up constantly, and you've got a team that knows how to attack down the flanks on a counter, I think there's a chance for Alisson to have a bit of work that day. I think.
I think that the main thing for the key to victory for Liverpool is their midfield. I think whatever he throws out there, Klopp, whether it
Yep.
be Thiago or Henderson or Fabinho and whatever, I think that'll be the way they win the game. Because if they can stop the midfield
Yep.
of Villarreal to break that pass forward or
Yep.
pressure them or make it difficult for them to function at all,
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
where they'll win the game. I think,
I have a.
they're gone.
No, I was gonna say I have a. It's not really like to your point, but you mentioned Thiago. I've got like a random wild card hot take for this game. If
Here we go.
Thiago plays in the game against Villarreal,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be. I think he'll be a complete non-factor. I think
Okay.
the type of center midfielder that Thiago is too easily dealt with and too often dealt with in the Spanish league to be mishandled the way he was in the previous games that he's played in. You know, there's a reason the man never was able to hold down a starting position in La Liga. You know, the way that he plays the midfield it's tremendous. It's great. It's 100%. Like it's beautiful. But he's a dime a dozen in La Liga. So I think that if he does that, if he has that sort of game against Liverpool, you can't. I just don't see them being able to have the luxury of having a floating center mid that doesn't really contribute a whole lot defensively and doesn't put his pressing up really high either. His whole thing is distribution. How are you going to do the job of distribution against a team that's sitting way back? I think he's probably going to be a non-factor. That's probably more of a. Is Naby Keita injured or something?
No, I don't think so.
I
From
think it's
memory,
more of a. I think it's more of a Naby Keita type game because
yeah.
you need some pace to get on top of your Danny Parejos and all that sort of stuff. I think Thiago's a bit too laid back for this
I
sort
think
of game.
they need to fight fire with fire on that one. I agree. But let's look elsewhere. Quickly back to the EPL. Arsenal Chelsea. What a game for Arsenal. 4-2. Couldn't beat Brighton. But take out Chelsea at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah,
A pretty piss poor game in terms of quality. Lovely goals. Don't take that away from the likes of Emil Smith Rowe, Azpilicueta. Even Werner, was deflected, but I mean, you can see the confidence in him to take the strike. So, it was 2-0 in the first half, or 2-1, whatever it was. I think it was 2-0, and it just seemed like neither team could defend for their life. Like it was just generally an ugly game for a lot of the time for both teams. But in the end, I think Nketiah's hustle at the back. Really putting pressure on Christensen and Malang Sarr to make those errors and win the extra ball, I think really was the difference. And
yeah.
it's weird to say that Chelsea didn't have the hustle in this game, but again, it seems like they bounce and they move well, and then they slow down and run out of steam in the next couple of games. So it's a bit of a weird time. Again, they have got Man United at the end of this week
Tonight.
on Friday, which is an important game, I think. For obviously Man United's chances, but for Chelsea to kind of just look like the team they were last season or earlier this season as well. And it's just it was just a really weird game when neither team could defend. It was just really, really bizarre.
I just feel like we've got into like a weird phase for Chelsea at the moment. They're sort of they feel uncomfortable with the position that they're in at the moment. They feel like they should have done better, but how could you have done better? There's some really objective reasoning as to why they're in the position that they're in. All that sort of stuff. I don't think it's warranted for them to feel badly about where they are at the moment. But at the same time, you can quite quickly talk yourself into why they should expect more from themselves. With the Lukaku signing and all those sorts of things. But I think it's a bit of a strange time at Chelsea. I think the next moves that they make in the transfer window will be crucial for dictating what they do next season. If they can, that's true. If they can, that's another thing, right? They've got that cloud looming over their head. Is like, what's the Russia war with Ukraine's impact going to be on the club? So there's all that. It's a very strange moment for Chelsea at the moment. It's a shame because they were starting to shape up like they were going to be pretty solid for the next few years. But it seems to slowly come unraveling. And there's also some players that were normally stalwarts for them in starting spots like Jorginho, like Kante, who are starting to show a bit of cracks in their game. So I think there's a lot of big decisions for them to make. I just hope they keep Tommy Tuchel around because I really do think he's the one thing at the moment that they've gotten right for sure at the club. I hope they don't sort of pull a hasty decision, make a big change there. But all right, let's wrap up on that one. Follow us on the socials at Last Goal Wins Pod on Twitter, at Last Goal Wins Pod _ on Instagram, at Last Goal Wins Podcast on Facebook, and all glory be to Bozza.
Hope you got your account back, buddy.
Yeah, I think he has. Alrighty. Goodbye.